I stared at the budget report spread across my desk, the same way I had every Monday morning for 16 years. At 57, I knew MidRoute Logistics inside and out. Every vendor, every contract, every penny that flowed through this company passed under my watch. I built these systems from scratch when the company was just 12 employees in a cramped office. Now we had 400 staff and offices in 6 states. CEO Marcus Webb liked to take credit for our growth, but I knew the truth. I was the backbone that held everything together. Every operational decision, every process improvement, every crisis that got quietly solved, that was my work. The coffee in my mug had gone cold as I reviewed vendor payments from last month. Something felt off. After 16 years, you develop an instinct for numbers that don't add up. A pattern was emerging in the payments to Precision Supply Co. The amounts seemed too round, too frequent. I pulled up more records going back 6 months. My stomach tightened. These weren't random irregularities. Someone was stealing from the company I dedicated my life to building. And I had a sinking feeling I knew exactly who was behind it. I spent the next 3 days quietly investigating. No accusations, no confrontations, just careful detective work. I pulled invoices, cross-referenced delivery schedules, and traced every payment to Precision Supply Co. The more I dug, the clearer the picture became. Marcus's best friend, Danny Chen, ran our accounting department. Danny had created a fake vendor account and was funneling money to himself through false invoices. The amounts were carefully calculated, big enough to add up to serious money, but small enough to fly under the radar. Except they didn't fly under my radar. Over the past 8 months, Danny had stolen nearly $200,000. Each fake invoice was perfectly formatted, complete with believable line items for office supplies and maintenance equipment that never existed. My hands shook as I printed the evidence. Spreadsheets showing the payment pattern, screenshots of the fake vendor registration, email chains where Danny approved his own invoices without proper oversight. Everything was there in black and white. I sat back in my chair, feeling sick. Danny wasn't just stealing money, he was betraying everyone who worked here. Betraying Marcus, who trusted him completely. Betraying me, who had always treated him with respect. But the evidence was bulletproof. I had to report this. Friday morning, I walked into HR Director Sarah Mitchell's office with a thick folder under my arm. Sarah and I had worked together for 12 years. She knew I wouldn't bring her something unless it was serious. I need to report financial fraud, I said quietly, closing the door behind me. Sarah's face went pale as I laid out the evidence. Invoice by invoice, payment by payment, I showed her exactly how Danny had been stealing. She asked sharp questions, double-checking my work, but the proof was overwhelming. "We need to involve the board immediately," she said, reaching for her phone. Within 2 hours, I was sitting in the boardroom with Sarah and 3 board members. I walked them through everything, answering their questions with the same methodical precision I'd used to uncover the theft. Board member Helen Rodriguez, one of the company's original founders, looked grim. "This is exactly the kind of documentation we need for prosecution. Lucas, you may have saved the company from much worse losses." They thanked me for my diligence and integrity. We agreed that Danny would be terminated immediately and the evidence would go to law enforcement. I thought I was protecting the company. I had no idea I was signing my own termination papers. Monday morning brought chaos. Security escorted Danny out of the building while other employees watched in confusion. Marcus's face was stone cold as he spoke with police investigators in the conference room. By Tuesday, the news had spread through the office. Danny Chen, Marcus's college roommate and best man at his wedding, had been arrested for embezzlement. The local business journal picked up the story. Danny's photo was in handcuffs on the front page. I kept my head down, focusing on my work. Several board members stopped by my office to thank me again. Helen Rodriguez even mentioned that my annual review would reflect my exceptional commitment to company integrity. But Marcus avoided me completely. When I passed him in the hallway, he looked through me like I didn't exist. When I sent him routine operations reports, he didn't respond. The temperature between us had dropped to freezing. On Wednesday, Marcus's assistant told me that my weekly strategy meeting was postponed indefinitely. For 16 years, Marcus and I had met every Wednesday at 2 p.m. to discuss operations. Now, apparently, my input wasn't needed. I felt a knot forming in my stomach. Marcus wasn't grateful that I'd saved the company money and prevented worse fraud. He was furious that I'd destroyed his best friend's life. Friday morning, my car wouldn't start. The battery was completely dead. Probably my own fault for leaving the headlights on. I called AAA, but they said it would be at least an hour. I tried calling a cab, but none were available. Finally, my neighbor drove me to work. I rushed into the office at 8:40 a.m., 10 minutes after my usual 8:30 arrival. In 16 years, I'd maybe been late 5 times total, and never more than a few minutes. Marcus was waiting by my office door, arms crossed. "We need to talk. Conference room. Now." My stomach dropped as I followed him down the hallway. In the conference room, HR Director Sarah sat at the table with a manila folder in front of her. She wouldn't make eye contact with me. Marcus closed the door and turned to face me. "Lucas, your chronic lateness and overall negligence have become unacceptable. We're terminating your employment effective immediately." My mouth fell open. Chronic lateness? Marcus, I've been late once in the past year, and that was today because of car trouble. "Your recent performance has been disappointing," he continued, as if I hadn't spoken. "This company needs reliable leadership, not excuses." I looked at Sarah, hoping for support, but she just slid the termination paperwork across the table. I signed the papers in silence, my hands steady despite the shock. 16 years of my life, and this was how it ended. Not with gratitude for saving the company from fraud, but with lies about chronic lateness. Sarah walked me back to my office to collect my things. "I'm sorry, Lucas," she whispered when Marcus was out of earshot. "This isn't right." I packed my personal items into a cardboard box, family photos, a coffee mug my daughter gave me, a paperweight from our 10-year anniversary celebration. Everything that mattered fit into one small box. As I carried it to the elevator, I could feel employees staring. Word had already spread. The man who built this company's operations from the ground up was being escorted out like a common criminal. Marcus didn't even say goodbye. He disappeared into his office and closed the door. I drove home in my neighbor's car, staring at the road ahead. For the first time in 16 years, I had nowhere to go on Monday morning. But Marcus had made a critical mistake. He thought he could rewrite history, make me disappear like I'd never mattered. He was about to learn just how wrong he was. Monday morning, my phone rang at 7:15 a.m. It was Janet, my former assistant, calling from her personal cell phone. "Lucas, it's chaos here," she whispered. "The vendor payment system crashed over the weekend. Nobody knows how to fix it. Suppliers are calling non-stop saying they haven't been paid." I sat in my kitchen, coffee growing cold, listening to her describe the meltdown. The payment system I'd designed and maintained for 8 years was down. The backup procedures I'd documented were apparently too complicated for the remaining staff to follow. "What about the IT department?" I asked. "They're in panic mode. They keep saying they need to call you, but Marcus forbid anyone from contacting you." By noon, Janet called again. 3 major suppliers had suspended deliveries pending payment. The operations team was scrambling to manually process orders they didn't understand. 2 junior managers had already submitted their resignations. "How's Marcus handling it?" I asked. "He's locked in his office, won't talk to anyone. He keeps saying everything will be fine by tomorrow." But I knew better. The systems I'd built were interconnected, documented in my head more than on paper. Without me, they were trying to operate a machine they'd never learned to run. I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. Tuesday brought worse news. Janet's updates painted a picture of complete operational collapse. Client deliveries were delayed. The accounting system couldn't reconcile payments. Customer service was overwhelmed with complaints. "Regional Manager Tom quit this morning," Janet reported. He said he couldn't watch the company fall apart. 3 more vendors called threatening to sue for late payments. Wednesday, the local business journal ran a story about MidRoute's operational difficulties. Unnamed sources suggested internal management changes were causing disruptions. The company's stock price dropped 8%. Thursday morning, I got a call from Rebecca Harrison, CEO of Transflow Industries, our biggest competitor. She'd been trying to recruit me for years. "Lucas, I heard about what happened. Marcus is an idiot. We have an immediate opening for VP of Operations. 20% salary increase, full benefits, and equity participation. For the first time since Friday, I smiled. I'm interested. Let's talk. That afternoon, while MidRoute burned, I sat in Transflow's executive conference room discussing my future. The contrast was striking. Professional respect versus petty revenge. My phone buzzed with a call from Marcus. I let it go to voicemail. The first voicemail from Marcus was short and awkward. "Lucas, it's Marcus. Can you call me back? We need to discuss some operational questions." I deleted it without calling back. Over the next 2 days, the calls multiplied. Marcus called 6 times on Friday, leaving increasingly desperate messages. By Sunday, his tone had shifted from casual to pleading. "Lucas, please call me back. We're having some temporary system issues. I know you're probably busy, but we could really use your input on a consulting basis." Janet kept me updated on the internal disaster. A major client had canceled their contract, citing delivery failures. The board was asking tough questions. Marcus was telling everyone the problems were minor glitches that would be resolved soon. Monday brought 12 missed calls from Marcus. The voicemails were getting pathetic. "Lucas, I know we didn't part on the best terms, but the company needs you right now. Can we meet for coffee and talk through some options?" I was sitting in Transflow's office, reviewing their operations manual and meeting my new team. The contrast was remarkable. Competent professionals who respected experience versus a panicking CEO who'd burned his most valuable asset. Marcus could keep calling. I had work to do. Tuesday morning, I met with Transflow's board of directors. They offered me a 3-year contract with guaranteed equity participation and a signing bonus that was more than my annual salary at MidRoute. "We've watched your work from a distance for years," board chairman Robert Chen told me. "You built something remarkable at MidRoute. We want you to do the same here." I signed the contract that afternoon. For the first time in a week, I felt energized about the future. Transflow had resources, vision, and leadership that valued expertise over politics. Meanwhile, Marcus called 14 times. I didn't answer once. Janet's evening update was grimmer than ever. "The warehouse system crashed today. Nobody knows how to restore the backup. We've got trucks sitting idle because drivers don't know where to deliver." Marcus spent 2 hours screaming at the IT team. "What's he telling the board?" I asked. "That it's all temporary." But Helen Rodriguez was here this afternoon asking detailed questions. She looked furious. Thursday morning, the Business Journal ran another story. MidRoute Logistics struggles continue. This time, they quoted anonymous employees describing systematic operational failures and management in crisis. The stock dropped another 12%. Marcus could spin all he wanted, but numbers don't lie. My first week at Transflow exceeded all expectations. Their systems were sophisticated but manageable. Their team was eager to learn and implement improvements. Most importantly, they respected experience and valued careful planning over quick fixes. "Your transition plan is brilliant," VP Jennifer Walsh told me after reviewing my 90-day strategy. "We've been trying to solve these logistics bottlenecks for months. You found solutions in 3 days." Meanwhile, MidRoute's collapse accelerated. Janet called with updates that sounded like a disaster movie. "The client database corrupted yesterday. We lost contact information for 30 major accounts. Marcus has been personally calling clients trying to apologize for delays they don't even know about yet." Friday morning brought the worst news yet. MidRoute's second largest client, Patterson Manufacturing, had terminated their contract. They cited unreliable service and poor communication as reasons for switching to a competitor. To Transflow Industries. "They specifically asked for you," Jennifer told me. "They said they'd been hoping to work with Lucas Mayfield for years." Marcus called 18 times that day. The voicemails were desperate now, offering consulting fees, begging for temporary help, promising to make things right between us. I forwarded every message to my lawyer and kept working on my new company's future. The Business Journal's Monday headline read, "MidRoute stock plummets amid operational crisis." The article detailed client defections, system failures, and questions about leadership capability during the transition. Anonymous quotes from MidRoute employees painted a devastating picture. "Ever since Lucas Mayfield left, nothing works right. We're flying blind without proper procedures. Management is in complete denial about how bad this has gotten. Janet called with insider information that made me laugh out loud. The board called an emergency meeting for this afternoon. Helen Rodriguez demanded a full operations audit. Marcus tried to blame everything on sabotage from disgruntled former employees, but nobody believed him. What did Helen say? That firing Lucas Mayfield was the stupidest decision in company history. She said it right in front of everyone. By Wednesday, 3 more major clients had jumped ship. The local news ran a segment about MidRoute's troubles, interviewing industry experts who called it a cautionary tale about the importance of institutional knowledge. Marcus called 26 times that day. I blocked his number. Thursday morning, Helen Rodriguez called me directly. Lucas, this is Helen from MidRoute's board. We need to talk. Privately. I met Helen at a quiet coffee shop downtown, curious about what she wanted. She looked exhausted, frustrated, and embarrassed. The board is giving Marcus 30 days to fix this mess, or we're removing him as CEO, she said without preamble. But between you and me, I don't think he can do it. The damage is too extensive. I sipped my coffee and waited for her to continue. You built those systems, Lucas. You understand the company better than anyone. If you came back as interim COO, we could stabilize things quickly. Helen, Marcus fired me for exposing his friend's fraud. Why would I return to work for someone who values loyalty over integrity? She nodded grimly. That's exactly why we're reconsidering Marcus's leadership. The Danny situation showed his judgment is severely compromised. I appreciated her honesty, but I'd already moved on. I have a great position at Transflow. Marcus made his choice. I understand, but if you change your mind, she slid a business card across the table. Per step, the board would welcome you back with open arms. Walking to my car, I felt a strange mix of vindication and sadness. The company I'd helped build was dying, and everyone finally understood my value. But it was too late. Janet called me Friday evening with disturbing news. She was whispering, clearly afraid of being overheard. Lucas, I heard something terrible today. I was working late, finishing the monthly reports, when Marcus took a call in his office. He didn't know I was still here. What did you hear? He was talking to someone about transferring money. He said something about liquidating assets before the board makes their move. Then he mentioned having accounts in the Cayman Islands. My blood ran cold. Are you sure that's what he said? I recorded part of it on my phone. Lucas, I think he's planning to steal money and run before the board fires him. This changed everything. I might be done with MidRoute, but I couldn't let Marcus destroy the company completely. Too many good people still worked there. Too many families depended on those jobs. Janet, I need you to be very careful. Don't let Marcus know you heard anything. Can you document when these conversations happen? I'll try, but Lucas, I'm scared. If he finds out I'm listening, we'll handle this the right way. Through proper channels with proper evidence, just like we did with Danny. But this time, I'd make sure the trap was perfect. Saturday morning, I called my lawyer, David Stern, and explained the situation. David had handled my employment contract at MidRoute and understood the company's structure. If Marcus is planning embezzlement, we need irrefutable evidence, David said. Corporate fraud at this level could land him in federal prison. Sunday, I drove to Janet's house to discuss strategy. She was terrified, but determined to do the right thing. I can document his calls and emails from my workstation, she said, but I need to be careful. He's been paranoid lately, looking over everyone's shoulders. We developed a simple plan. Janet would keep detailed logs of Marcus's activities, especially any financial discussions. She'd save relevant emails and record conversations when possible. Everything would be time-stamped and documented properly. Remember, we're not trying to entrap him, I emphasized. We're just collecting evidence of crimes he's already planning. Monday morning, Janet called with her first update. He spent 2 hours on the phone with someone called Richardson Trust Management. I heard him mention emergency asset protection and offshore alternatives. He's definitely planning something. Tuesday, she overheard Marcus telling someone that the board meeting next week might be my last chance to secure what's mine. The timeline was becoming clear. Marcus planned to steal money before the board could fire him. Janet's evidence collection over the next week was meticulous. She documented phone calls, saved email drafts Marcus thought he'd deleted, and tracked his access to financial systems. The pattern was unmistakable. Marcus was creating false vendor accounts, just like Danny had. But instead of small amounts over time, he was planning one massive transfer. Nearly $2 million would disappear into offshore accounts right before the board's deadline. Wednesday evening, Janet called with the smoking gun. He left his computer unlocked when he went to lunch. I saw the transfer instructions on his screen. Everything set up for Friday morning at 9 a.m., right before the board meeting. Did you get screenshots? Better. I forwarded the email to myself from his account, then deleted it from his sent folder. He'll never know. Thursday, I had all the evidence compiled into a comprehensive report, but I needed to get it to someone who could act quickly. Someone Marcus wouldn't suspect. I called Helen Rodriguez. Helen, it's Lucas Mayfield. I have urgent information about Marcus that the board needs to see immediately. What kind of information? Evidence that he's planning to embezzle $2 million tomorrow morning. The silence on the phone lasted 10 seconds. Can you meet me in 30 minutes? Helen stared at the evidence spread across her dining room table, her face growing paler with each document. Bank transfer instructions, offshore account details, fake vendor registrations, everything Marcus needed to steal and disappear. This is devastating, she whispered. Not just the theft, but the betrayal. We trusted him with the company's future. What can the board do with less than 12 hours' notice? We have emergency powers for exactly this situation. I can call an executive session tonight and we can set up a sting operation. Helen made calls while I organized the evidence into a prosecutable package. By 8 p.m., 3 board members had reviewed everything and approved immediate action. Here's what we'll do, Helen explained. Tomorrow morning, we'll let Marcus initiate the transfer. Our IT department will track everything in real time. The moment he tries to move money, we'll have him. Won't that risk the actual theft? David Kim and IT can reverse any transfer within 30 minutes. We want Marcus to commit the crime on camera, with witnesses, so there's no possibility of him claiming innocence. I spent Thursday night barely sleeping, thinking about the company I'd helped build and the man who was about to destroy it. Marcus had chosen revenge over integrity, and now he'd pay the price. Friday morning would be Judgment Day. Friday, 8:45 a.m. I sat in Transflow's parking lot, waiting for Janet's call. Inside MidRoute's building, board members were quietly taking positions. Helen Rodriguez sat in the conference room with a laptop, monitoring the company's financial systems in real time. At 8:52 a.m., Janet called. He's at his computer. I can see him logging into the transfer system. Are you recording? Yes. Helen gave me a special phone that captures everything. He's entering the account numbers. $2 million to Richardson Trust Management in the Cayman Islands. He's double-checking the amounts. His hands are shaking. He's moving the mouse toward the confirm button. Transfer initiated. The money's moving. Janet screamed. Security just burst into his office. Helen's there with 2 police officers. Marcus is yelling, but they're handcuffing him. I sat in my car, listening to justice being served. The man who'd fired me for exposing fraud was now being arrested for attempted embezzlement. The irony was perfect. What's happening now? I asked. They're reading him his rights. The whole office is watching. Lucas, it's over. He's finished. By noon, Marcus's arrest was headline news. MidRoute CEO arrested for attempted embezzlement, led every local business report. The story detailed how board members had caught him red-handed trying to steal $2 million. Janet called with eyewitness details. He tried to claim it was a test of the security system. Then he said someone else must have used his computer. When that didn't work, he started screaming about how the board was conspiring against him. The FBI seized Marcus's computers, phones, and financial records. His office was sealed with crime scene tape. Employees gathered in small groups, whispering about the man they'd trusted to lead the company. What about operations? I asked. Helen's running things temporarily. She told everyone that stability is the first priority. She also made an announcement that certain former employees might be contacted about returning to help with the transition. I smiled at Helen's diplomatic language. But I wasn't going back. I'd found something better at TransFlow. That afternoon, the local news interviewed industry experts about corporate fraud in logistics companies. One analyst said, "This appears to be a pattern of poor judgment at MidRoute, following the recent arrest of their accounting manager." Marcus had destroyed his best friend and himself within 3 weeks. The next morning, federal prosecutors announced formal charges: attempted embezzlement, wire fraud, and conspiracy. Marcus faced up to 20 years in prison. The board moved quickly to contain the damage. Helen Rodriguez was named interim CEO while they searched for permanent leadership. She immediately reached out to former employees who'd left during Marcus's tenure, offering to bring back institutional knowledge. "We're not just replacing Marcus," Helen announced at a company-wide meeting. "We're rebuilding a culture of integrity and respect." The first step was stabilizing operations. Helen hired a consulting firm to document the systems I'd built, trying to recreate 15 years of institutional knowledge in a few weeks. It was expensive and slow, but necessary. Meanwhile, Marcus's legal troubles multiplied. Federal investigators discovered that his offshore accounts contained money from other questionable transfers. The embezzlement charges were just the beginning. Janet called with an update from the courthouse. "His lawyer is trying to negotiate a plea deal, but prosecutors aren't interested. They say he showed sophisticated planning and deliberate intent to defraud. The judge denied bail because he's a flight risk." By Thursday, MidRoute stock had partially recovered. Investors were relieved that corrupt leadership was gone, even though operational challenges remained. The company would survive, but it would take years to rebuild what Marcus had destroyed in 3 weeks. That evening, Helen called me personally. "Lucas, I know you're happy at TransFlow, but I want you to know, the board formally apologizes for what happened. Marcus lied to us about your termination." Marcus's trial began 6 weeks later. I wasn't required to testify, but I attended the opening statements out of curiosity. The man who'd once commanded respect now sat hunched at the defendant's table, looking defeated and desperate. The prosecutor's case was devastating. They had recordings, emails, bank records, and witness testimony showing Marcus's plan in detail. The defense tried to argue that he was under extreme stress from the company's problems, but the evidence of premeditation was overwhelming. Janet testified about overhearing his phone calls and finding the transfer instructions. Her calm, detailed testimony demolished any claim that this was impulsive behavior. "Mr. Webb spent days setting up these accounts," she explained to the jury. "He researched offshore banking, created false vendor records, and planned the timing to avoid detection. This wasn't a moment of weakness. It was calculated theft." The trial lasted 2 weeks. Marcus took the stand in his own defense, blaming everyone except himself. He claimed the board was out to get him, that employees were sabotaging company operations, that former executives like me had created a toxic environment. The jury deliberated for 4 hours, guilty on all counts. At sentencing, Marcus got 12 years in federal prison. The judge called his crimes a profound betrayal of trust that harmed employees, investors, and customers alike. Justice was finally served. With Marcus gone and operations slowly stabilizing, the board faced a crucial decision: who would lead MidRoute forward? Helen had done excellent work as interim CEO, but she preferred her board role. The search committee interviewed external candidates for weeks, but none understood the company's unique challenges. Finally, Helen called me with an unexpected request. "Lucas, we need your input on CEO candidates. You know the company better than anyone." I reviewed their finalist list and was impressed by the quality. But one name stood out: Sarah Mitchell, the former HR director who'd tried to protect me during Marcus's reign. "Sarah understands the culture we're trying to rebuild," I told Helen. "She's smart, ethical, and respected by employees. Plus, she knows where the bodies are buried from the Marcus era." The board agreed. Sarah was named CEO with a mandate to restore integrity and operational excellence. Her first decision was reaching out to former employees who'd left during Marcus's tenure. Several excellent managers returned, bringing stability and experience. "We're not just fixing systems," Sarah announced at her first company meeting. "We're fixing our soul." Within 6 months, MidRoute had recovered most of its lost clients. The company that had nearly died was growing again. I watched from TransFlow with satisfaction. The company I'd helped build would survive after all. 2 years after my firing, I stood on stage at the Regional Logistics Conference, accepting an award for innovation in supply chain management on behalf of TransFlow Industries. The past 24 months had been extraordinary. TransFlow had grown by 40% under my leadership. We'd absorbed several former MidRoute clients, including Patterson Manufacturing. Our systems ran flawlessly, our team was motivated, and our reputation was sterling. In the audience, I spotted several familiar faces from my MidRoute days, including Janet, who now worked as Sarah's executive assistant at the rebuilt company. After my speech, a reporter approached with questions about my career journey. You went from being fired to winning industry awards in less than 2 years. What's your advice for professionals facing similar setbacks? I thought carefully before answering. Integrity matters more than politics. Document your work, protect your reputation, and never compromise your values for short-term peace. The right opportunities will come to people who do the right things. The reporter asked about Marcus's downfall. I take no joy in seeing anyone go to prison, but actions have consequences. When leaders choose corruption over integrity, they hurt everyone who depends on them. That evening, Helen Rodriguez approached me at the conference reception. You could have destroyed MidRoute completely when Marcus fired you. Instead, you helped save it. That says everything about your character. My phone rang at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday morning 3 years after my termination. The caller ID showed Federal Correctional Institution. I almost didn't answer. Lucas, it's Marcus. I know you probably don't want to hear from me. His voice was different, smaller, defeated, stripped of the arrogance that had defined him. I'm calling to apologize. For everything. For firing you. For lying about it. For trying to steal from the company you helped build. I destroyed everything good in my life because I was too proud to admit when I was wrong. I listened in silence as he continued. You were right about Danny. You were right about the company. You were right about everything, and I punished you for it. I lost my family, my freedom, my reputation, all because I couldn't handle the truth. His voice cracked. I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed you to know that I understand now. You were the best employee we ever had, and I threw it all away for pride. The line went quiet except for his breathing. I'm sorry, Lucas. I'm truly, deeply sorry. I sat in my kitchen, holding the phone, thinking about forgiveness and consequences. Finally, I spoke. Marcus, I appreciate the apology. I hope you find peace. I hung up and deleted the voicemail notification. That chapter was closed. Last month, Sarah Mitchell invited me to speak at MidRoute's annual company meeting. The theme was lessons in leadership and integrity, and she wanted me to address the employees about rebuilding trust after a crisis. I almost declined. TransFlow was my focus now, and I'd moved on from the past. But Janet called personally to ask. Lucas, half our employees are new since the Marcus era. They know the story, but they've never heard your perspective. It would mean a lot. So I found myself standing in MidRoute's conference room, looking at 200 faces, some familiar, some new, all curious about the man who'd helped save their company. I talked about the importance of speaking up when you see wrongdoing, even when it's costly. About building systems that outlast any individual leader. About choosing integrity over easy relationships. Success isn't about avoiding problems, I concluded. It's about how you handle them when they arise. This company faced its greatest crisis and emerged stronger because good people chose to do right things. The standing ovation lasted 2 minutes. Afterward, young employees approached with questions about ethics, career development, and handling workplace conflicts. Their enthusiasm reminded me why I'd loved building MidRoute in the first place. Driving back to TransFlow, I reflected on the journey. I'd been fired for exposing fraud, watched the company nearly collapse, helped catch an embezzling CEO, and ultimately seen justice prevail. Marcus had tried to silence me with termination. Instead, he'd freed me to find something better.